Let's move on. The IEA is a think tank that stands for freedom in its political as well as economic aspects. And I think it's good to talk about the broader aspects of freedom from time to time, particularly free speech. And Christian, you've been watching what's been going on in Germany recently.
Yes, well, it's an IEA author, Zitelmann, who got into trouble because he was, he made fun of this argument that you see from some circles that we could solve the Ukraine issue by just giving Vladimir Putin a part of what he wants, meeting him halfway. Zitelmann was making fun of that logic by saying, well, this is basically the 1938 appeasement logic. Give Hitler a part of Czechoslovakia, give him the Sudetenland, and then he will be happy with that. And he made that point by reposting an image where you had Vladimir Putin on one hand saying, give me Ukraine and I'll go away. And on the other side, a picture of Hitler saying, give me Czechoslovakia and I'll go away. And in that picture, Hitler was wearing the party uniform and had a swastika armband, which of course, that's what he used to do. Now, somebody saw this and said, you're posting a Nazi symbol. Okay, technically true. But what happens is, under German law, you cannot post Nazi symbols. And the intention behind that is obviously to stop people glorifying Nazi ideology. That's not a new law. That's been there since the foundation of the Federal Republic. It's just that in recent weeks, people have increasingly often used this in clearly bad faith. Because the way it normally works is, yes, that paragraph exists, but there's a clear understanding that intention and context matters. If you say you write an article, a historical article about that period, and that includes, for some reason, a picture where you see a swastika flag or an SS logo or whatever, and it's for historical, educational reasons, that is completely fine. That was never covered by that paragraph. People were always able to do that. Or if it's to make a satirical point, even if you don't agree with the point being made, but it's always been clear, in that context, totally fine. Right, so it's not the symbol as such. It's not that people see the symbol and somehow become genocidal maniacs. I've reviewed this book for our blog last month about from a Holocaust survivor. He has pictures in there, and you can of course see some Nazi symbols in there because that's just the period. But it was just totally clear that in his case it could possibly be an intent of glorification. It's also clear in Zitelmann's case, clearly a bad faith accusation. And what's interesting is it's always used against either conservatives or liberals. It's always from somebody, presumably a leftist, making these legal challenges, and clearly with the intention of silencing somebody they don't agree with for other reasons by implying, oh, you're a Nazi sympathizer. Now, okay, you could say this is a specific German and, well, I think Austrian as well, law that doesn't need to bother us here. But what it shows is something a bit about the erosion of free speech culture. So we've often talked about, and we've had publications about, what happens, the legal foundation under which people get prosecuted for expressing opinions. So when somebody gets arrested for a tweet, there's a legal basis for this. We've often talked about the legal basis, but quite often the legal basis isn't new. And you could say if we had a general culture that values freedom of speech, it wouldn't really matter so much what the law says if people interpret it in the right way and in a generous pro-free speech way. If we had a consensus, okay, we disagree on this, but I'm happy for you to be able to say this, and you accept that I'm allowed to express my opinions too, that would be one thing. But the fact that laws get abused in this vexatious way, that shows us something about the erosion of the free speech culture.
Yeah, well, I think we can see that everywhere, Andy.
Yeah. I mean, and also, I mean, the symbols are triggering for people because of what the Nazis did, which we're not ambiguous about. You know, the whole genocide thing is the thing that we want people to know about the Nazis and their appalling record in history. Merely seeing a swastika, which, if memory serves, is a reversal of an old Jainist religious symbol, is not the thing that people worry about. So it's an absolutely crazy law and a crazy interpretation of the law. But anyway, wider free speech issues, what we're seeing here is an extension of the control culture. So the desire to control what other people say and think in the hope of making sure they think the right things. And this is I think Jamie White, one of our authors, referred to this as the cultural control left, something like that. And we see it in other areas. I mean, when we had our battle with the Charity Commission back in 2018, central to that debate was whether or not, as a charity, we were permitted to publish a book that disagreed with the government about a plan for Brexit. And it's not quite as clear-cut as that. If you're an education charity, you have to comment on things in a sufficiently balanced and neutral way, as is required in an education charity, which after 2 years of battling with them, we established could be done in the round. And quite important in proving that were things like the fact we had multiple authors who commented on the EU in different ways. Some people were pro-Remain, some people were pro-Leave, some crazy people, Christian, liked the Norway model, and some people wrote a book called Plan A+. And we eventually overturned the official warning. But the act of a state regulator trying to tell a charity what to say and edit books is what's called the chilling effect.
Yeah.
And that chilling effect is the important point. It's an important point for the online harms bill. It's an important point for the way people are currently debating whether or not children should be allowed to see social media. And free speech is an absolute. And one of the important things that we do as an educational organisation that's interested in the institutions of a free society is stand up for the absolute protection of free speech, other than in very rare exceptional cases, classically shouting fire in a crowded theatre where speech can actually cause harm. And even then, the tests are pretty extreme. But the case you cite is obviously bonkers, and hopefully it'll be overturned very quickly, but the chilling effect has already happened.
Yeah, I think we can see something similar happening here, to be honest. So we have a lot of legislation on our books that's was put on our books some time ago now. Some of the public order acts, the sort of stirring up offences, as they're called, stirring up racial hatred or whatever, goes back to the mid-80s. We've got the Malicious Communications Act. We've got all kinds of things. These were designed for a different world. They were designed where if you wanted to stir up racial hatred, you had to stand in the street with a megaphone, or you had to find a sort of photocopier and produce something and hand it out. You just could not get a big audience. Similarly, malicious communications was designed for a world where you would write your letter in green ink and send it off, and probably nobody else would know about it. Now, all of a sudden, we've got an explosion and anybody can communicate with anybody en masse, and the laws are not really fit for this purpose. They're being misused, I think, in this new world. And the only thing that stops them being misused is a strong culture of free speech and respect for free speech, which, of course, we do not have. That is the basic problem. If you have a strong culture of respect for free speech, then the laws are to some extent irrelevant. They're for sort of edge cases and fringe cases, but everybody understands what can be said and what can't be said. And when you don't, you have a big problem. And that's what we have at the moment. I do also think there's something a bit odd. The swastika case kind of reveals something, and I've written about it in the past as Voldemort syndrome from the Harry Potter books, that you just can't say it. It doesn't matter what the context is. You just can't say this word. You just can't see this image. There is some sort of magical power in it that has to be respected. And with the swastika particularly, you can see why people might have something of that feeling. I was, when I was in Denmark, I went around the Carlsberg brewery, and the symbol of the Carlsberg brewery in the late 19th century was in fact the swastika. They had taken it from the Indian sort of symbol of goodwill. And when you go round in the tiling and the paneling, at least this was in the mid-2000s, it's still there. And they had taken a deliberate decision to not take it down because it was, that was Carlsberg at the time. And they thought it was wrong to disown that. But nevertheless, when you see it, it feels strange. So I get that people have that reaction to it. All the more need to have a strong kind of cultural belief that you have to push back against that. Context matters.
Yes, and I would use this case. Okay, you said we are free speech absolutists. True, but I would use this case to say we could use this even to reach out to people who are not absolutists, who agree with the principle. In some case, some opinions should maybe be censored. And you could show them a case like that and say, well, okay, even if in principle you think that, bear in mind, firstly, there's always, keep in mind who is going to interpret cases like that, right? There's always, in this case, this was probably some hapless bureaucrat who didn't understand the irony, the case being made. And this is very, with Twitter users, we see this all the time. You make some ironic case, somebody takes it at face value, and then you despair and think, no, obviously I'm saying the opposite. Don't you get it? How much more obvious can I make it? Well, okay. If this is true for a normal tweet, I mean, these are the people who misunderstand obvious satire are going to be the ones who interpret laws like that. And you need to prove to them, look, I was making a sarcastic comment, and I have a track record of doing this, and then you have to document it and all that. And quite often people who favor censorship or some kind of content control, they think the rules are going to be set and interpreted by people like them. Absolutely no guarantee of that. It could be somebody, and clearly is in this case, somebody who's totally clueless, and you need to explain irony and sarcasm and all that to them. And also the bad faith users.
Does Germany have a branch of the government that defines irony and sarcasm?
They should.
I think so, yeah. And they'd be a great long word for it as well.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, it would create jobs as well.
And for those listening in Germany, Christian has just launched into a tirade against all of the German politicians that he is personally disapproving of, but you can't hear it because it's illegal under German law.
Yeah, but all censored, but it's going to be a long rant.
Very good. On that note, we better finish up for this week. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, everybody. Go to our social media, follow us on YouTube, follow us on X and everywhere else. Thanks for listening.